can say that, I guess, across the country right now. So,
but you know what? Hey, it's been fun. You know, this year's not obviously going the way anyone wanted, but if anything, I know I've learned a lot, and I'm sure everybody else has.
Oh yeah,
we're live, guys.
Wonderful. Todd, welcome.
Hi, thank you, Nicole.
Yes, welcome
Good to meet
the
you,
show.
and good to meet everybody.
I'm excited to hear. Is Mr. Darnell? He is unavailable today, right?
Yeah.
yeah. He had something up that took him off the. He had to handle everything, so nothing he could really do about it.
So we're talking modes today, as we all know. I invited some people, and Tony invited Todd, and PJ invited Jason. So I'm really excited to hear what everyone has to say, because I know we keep talking about this across the industry and how things are weird, some in great ways, and so it's nice to think about how we all align together, to make this industry work, and what that looks like today and tomorrow, and what we can kind of plan for going into 2021. So I'm really excited to hear all of your insights today. Todd comes to us with a little bit of a different background. So Todd, tell us a little bit about you first.
Well, let's see. Gosh, where do I start? I founded Cardio Transformation Group, which is a leadership culture, kind of a cultural development company. Wrote a book called Lead for God's Sake 10 years ago. Grew up as a part of a family business in a small Midwestern town in the middle of nowhere, northern Indiana, and was heavily involved in the business world most of my life. Actually spent 12 seasons in the 90s and early 2000s as an assistant college basketball coach. And then, I was still involved in our family business while I was doing that. It's an NAIA school, so you have to keep your day job. And so I was running both of the business world and the sports world for about a dozen years. And then out of necessity, more than anything else, really developed a passion for teams and cultural development and leadership, and started just obsessively studying the topic. And actually, my goal originally was to read 500 books on the subject. Had an author tell me, if you read 500 books on leadership, you become an international expert. So I was naive enough, and that was before kids, to think that I could do it pretty fast. I've done it, but it did take a little longer than I anticipated. And then in 2000, I think it was 2004, I had been writing and kind of formulating a lot of my team dynamic philosophies. And in 2004, I was asked to come into a large manufacturing company and kind of lead the cultural transformation. So I did. It was about a $250 million company, and with plants, I don't know, maybe 13, 14 plants around the country. And then we were eventually bought by our largest competitor, which was a public company, and was able to do kind of the same thing with that organization, kind of lead team leadership development and cultural transformation, and assimilating both cultures together. So, and then that led me to 2010, where I wrote and released the book Lead for God's Sake. And that book really, really crazy how it just got into the hands of a lot of high profile leaders and coaches around the country. And once that happened, they started talking, some of the coaches were talking about it on ESPN and ESPN, the magazine, and different places like that. And so that really obviously broadened my reach and the demand to get me out and work with a lot of just really some of the best teams in the country in the sports world. And then ultimately everybody in I should say, in the business world are pretty interested in what's going on in the sports world. There's so many parallels. And so that allowed me to spend a ton of time in the business world too, coaching a lot of CEOs and kind of working with them on their leadership and cultural development. So just a mix of 30 plus years. I'm 50 now. So I've spent the better part of 30 plus years kind of running both the sports and business worlds, and with a specialty on leadership and team dynamics. So it's probably longer than you wanted, but
No, it's
that's
so
kind of
interesting, and it's such a cool concept. There's so much to learn in that space. So I'm sure we're going to be talking about some stuff in regards to transportation that you might have some questions on too, because we also have quite a few leaders in the room here. So Christy, go for it. Want to hear, I mean, I know you've been on our show before, but tell us your background and, you know, what you have going on right now. I mean, Todd, I don't know if you were aware, but we kind of changed up the segment a little bit, and we are talking about all these different modes, you know, an interesting space within transportation. And so a lot of the people that you can see on the Zoom all come from different backgrounds of what type of shipping we're doing. So we're going to be talking about some of that, but we also want to get your feedback in regards to leadership kind of molding into that when there are big changes, you know, and that's what our industry is experiencing, is a big change, a big shift on what's happening. And we have some companies that are acting ethically and doing some great things. We have some companies that are not acting so ethically and potentially, to some people's opinion, I guess you could say, and it's just creating additional layers of issues within our industry. So it's a great time for you to come on too, because we would love to hear your feedback in regards to some of these different things that we're all trying to accomplish as business leaders.
And,
so
and everybody was invited on here for a reason. I mean, Michael wasn't invited, but
I did.
Show up. We gave him the key just to hop in, but yeah, so we look forward to it.
Yeah. So Christy, again, I started introducing you, and then I went talking about something else. Go me. But I would love to start with you. Okay.
Yeah, that's what us women do, right?
Yeah. Ooh.
So Christy Knischel, President, CEO of Knischel Logistics. Those of you that don't know me, I started in the industry at age 19, which was 24 years ago, working for my father, family-owned 3PL logistics provider. The company was founded on shipping primarily intermodal freight. We expanded to truck brokerage and LTL as well. We do some other little things in there, but that's the main modes that we ship. As of today, 80% of our revenue is still shipping on the rails. And yeah, I've had a long journey working in the industry, seen a lot of different things, and this year's definitely been probably the most challenging year I have seen in my career. So excited to be on today and talk more about all these different issues.
Awesome. Michael, we got you on mute, but we want to hear, for the people that don't know you, your background in regards to trans.
Oh, I put myself on.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've been in the industry for about 8 years. I've always.
Oop, we can barely hear you.
Can you hear me better?
You sound pretty low.
Hold on. Can you hear me?
It's low.
He's out in Washington, so there's probably still a lot of counting going on, kind of drowns it out.
What'd you say?
Oh, there you are. We got you now.
I hate these things. All right. Where was I at? Oh, so I've been in the industry 8 years. You know, I've worked for a few different 3PLs, but I've always been in the 3PL model. A little different than I guess brokerage. You know, strictly the last 8 years, I've only sold, you know, a one-stop shop model, meaning if, you know, I could come in there and figure out, you know, to do things better, doesn't matter what mode, you're gonna, you know, outsource it to, you know, my company. So it's a little different when it comes to that, because I know that in this industry, obviously there's a ton of, you know, when I say brokerage, meaning like, you know, let me get a shipment. So I don't have much experience on that end. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of it.
I welcomed you onto the show. That's one of the things that popped out to me, is because of your diverse background in LTL. So yeah,
so I guess I could elaborate a little bit on that. Is, you know, throughout those 8 years, my book of business has been predominantly, LTL. So I happen to, I guess, know some things about LTL more than I do anything else. So, yeah.
Welcome. And then Jason, you started chatting for a second in regards to your background, but let's formally hear what you have going on at Circle.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was in the Army for 12 years. So I appreciate the leadership plug earlier. I think that's huge. I was actually a drill sergeant my last 3 years in the military. So the leadership piece is huge. But as far as freight goes, Flatbed's my kind of name of the game for me. Been doing this for 4 years now in the flatbed world specifically. And kind of what I've been able to do is be able to provide kind of the same level of service with an increased capacity than an asset. It sounds normal for a dry van world, right? Like what a broker does, but being able to transcend that in the flatbed world was kind of a game changer a few years ago. So kind of being up to date in how that's impacted the differences between an asset provider and the flatbed versus a brokered capacity is much more, the disparity is huge compared to what, a dry van world is. So I feel like I can hopefully explain that a little bit better as we go on, but I'm really happy to be here. Freight's obviously crazy this year. So, but as far as flatbed stuff goes, I've run a team for about 5 or 6 people now over here at Circle. So we've got a good group on the flatbed side.
Very cool. TJ, steal the show. Go for it.
What's up, gang? I've been in mostly dry van and expedite. We had some stuff, flatbed wise, for a little bit there, but that's kind of why I brought Jason on again. He said, I work with him, and he's got a team up there that, it's kind of cool where I can reach out to them quite a bit. Me and Jason have helped each other out. He's, helped us out when we, started to grow quite a bit. So it's a good dynamic there. But yeah, we really push, a lot of the dry van stuff, and it's something I've always been in, and our trucks have always had. So even when I transitioned originally from the asset side to brokerage, it gave me a little bit of a leg up, because that's what a lot of our brokerage does too. So just knowing, what you can and can't do, from everything from drop trailers to cross docks to all that stuff that you experience on the dry van side. It's I've got into some other modes and worked with them as well, but it's just dry van's what I know, and that's what I've always done. So for me right now, the market's just it's crazy when you can't even rent. It's harder to even rent a dry van. Like Jason said earlier, Jason called me a week or two ago asking if he could rent some of our dry vans, like our own ones we own. And I'm like, why would you ever ask me that, man? Just go to Extra Lease. He's like, I've called every single Extra Lease from California to Iowa. None of them have dry vans. And I'm like, okay, that's tough. I said, well, you ain't getting any of mine because I need all of them. But no, what was he doing though? He, on the brokerage side, he was trying to come up with a solution, right, for his customer. So at the end of the day, that's kind of what we do here. It's what a lot of people do, but that's what separates, the good from the bad, is saying, hey, what do you have issue wise, capacity solutions? Hey, let's drop some trailers. Let's find some power onlys, taking it to the next level. So, that's kind of background, mode wise for me.
And I guess for myself is the expedited space. So I'm the owner of a company that specializes in all time sensitive. I'm a little different than most. I don't have any contractual freight at this point at all. We come in every day and build our book, I guess you could say, for that day and what we're trying to accomplish for our customers, depending upon what their needs are. So again, like TJ said, adapting, equipment wise. So we do some truckload as well as a lot of straight truck and sprinter van work, as well as some white glove work. So I'm excited for this segment. It's very cool. Like I said, when I started just blabbing at you guys with this concept of everybody's kind of stumped, I don't know about all of you, but for my side of the business, the past couple of days, we're kind of looking at each other, because the first Monday and Tuesday were relatively quiet, like very, very quiet. So we're so impacted by what's going on in the world, obviously being an expedited provider only, that we're looking at election if the election's going on, it affects the way that we're moving freight and what's coming about. But so I think we're looking at this now as we're in November, and what is that feedback for people out there that are kind of probably feeling, some people I hear are just kicking ass and taking names, and then other companies are really struggling to meet that same concept, or there's this crazy imbalance of their spot market stuff is doing fantastic, and then their normal, LTL is not being serviced, or truckload is, their contractual work they're losing money on. So it's just really cool to hear the perspective from you guys on, what are you thinking is, or what are you seeing in your marketplace now? And I threw it in my post yesterday when I did the video of no fluff, because we all want to come to this platform and go, we're the best companies out there. We do this, we do that. But what are the hurdles that we're seeing, in the brokerage space for you, Christy, like in that container space? Like what are those things? And, how are we thinking that we're going to overcome these things? And really, what is next year in your mind as either a business leader or just a specialist in this space think is really foreseeable? So, I would love to hear the feedback there, whoever wants to take that floor. And then obviously incorporating in Todd to give us some of that leadership concept with these changes. So Christy, go ahead and give us your current status.
Yeah, so I would say right now we're actually back to shipping pre-COVID levels. So that's really good. We're actually very profitable right now. And like I mentioned, 80% of what we ship is on the railroad. So it's been challenging for us specifically because a lot of our freight comes out of the West Coast, Los Angeles and Northern California specifically. So I would say from June through probably 2 weeks ago, it's been a struggle to get boxes in LA, primarily because of the e-commerce that has blown up. The railroads, letting us know that UPS, FedEx, Auto, those companies all take priority on the railroad. So customers that we have that are retail, food, beverage, all different sorts are kind of having to sit the back seat a little bit and not get as much equipment. A lot of our customers, actually almost all of our business is contract business. So it is a little bit different than truck brokerage for us. Even the truck brokerage that we do is mostly contract, but it's really tough when customers actually have mutual commitment agreements with the railroad, which allows them to actually pay a price that is a year-round contract, and the railroads are supposed to provide certain amount of boxes during peak shipping times. Obviously, those fulfillments were not being fulfilled even to a quarter of what the amounts they were supposed to get due to the e-commerce. So e-commerce has kind of really disrupted the whole industry, in particular when COVID happened. Not that it wasn't going to happen at some point, but to the extent that it has. So that's definitely been a huge challenge for us. But in the same token, it's also made us think that we really need to grow these other modes faster than we are and add additional areas of revenue, just because 80% of our revenue being in one mode, when something like this happened, it really crippled us initially. But now I'm telling you, we're back to pre-COVID levels specifically on that side. And I can tell you in LA has loosened up. It's gotten a lot better for us, but now we're seeing these issues in the Northern California area. You have wine coming out of there right now. We ship a lot of rice out of there this time of year. That new crop has just come out. You have tomatoes, other kinds of products. So now, like I said, it switched from LA to NorCal. So we're dealing with that issue, but in the same token, we're not seeing the issues as difficult in that area than we did in LA. We're probably seeing freight being pushed out about 3 days, but on any given week, we're probably having roughly 130 to 150 shipments that we're not able to pick up that keep getting rolled over on our rail side. So again, those are the challenges, but then it also brings us to, okay, what's our strategic plan going forward, and make sure that, God forbid, something like this happens again. We want to make sure that we're more well-rounded than what we are, and we have more revenue coming in different areas than having a bulk in one area. We've never really had that issue before till now, and it was a short-term issue. So like I said, now, I mean, we're definitely doing a lot better than what we were. And then to talk a little bit about the truck brokerage, again, most of the truck brokerage freight that we do is contract business. We haven't had as many issues there. I would say the biggest issue is really on the transactional side. So we're seeing a ton of activity. It's just hard getting the trucks and or getting customers to commit to certain prices, wanting to wait. But what I can tell you is when you have those modes available to you, rail is a good option to have as a backup to truck and vice versa. So there are customers that ship primarily rail that now we can look at truck as an option for them if they're willing to pay those prices and deal with the way that the market is going. We have some customers that are just waiting it out because they'd rather wait a few days to pay the price that we have in place for them to ship their product out on the rail side. So that's a little bit of what we have going on. I feel like it's definitely gotten better than what it was, but it's going to continue to be challenging going into next year for sure. There's a lot of product that's not going to be delivered in time for Christmas. I'm sure you've all heard and see the reports out there, and it's a race to get everything to the stores. So,
and you know, it's funny you say that, because that's that domino effect of capacity. Because you know, just looking at the customers we have, there's so many of them that ran, you know, rail, and with the rail capacity down so much, we're getting loads constantly, Ohio to Montana, Ohio to Idaho. You know, these cross country shipments affects capacity, because now you've got, you know, trucks that, you know, aren't available for 3-4 days, and then they turn right around and they're getting $4,800 out of Idaho to come back to Chicago. You know, so then there's another 3 or 4 days, and instead of going to those markets that they're usually in, and it's just a spread out to make up for the rail, and these customers are paying crazy rates compared to what they would on rail, but it's got to go. And so that's a great point, Christy. Honestly, having that trucks as the backup to the rail that's where you can really you know, make that profit, still move it for your customers. It's just going to cost more.
Yeah, the sense of urgency, I've seen that too. Like, we're getting more requests for drop trailer team loads. So they want the trailers dropped for 4 days, but they need the transit time to be on a team. That's absolutely crazy the way we're seeing that. I've had more requests for that in the last week than I have in, you know, 3-4 years. So that it's kind of all goes into that whole like warehouse space you were talking about yesterday, TJ, as well.
Christy, I was going to ask my brother-in-law.
one thing
Union Pacific, and he was saying that they're kind of changing the way that they are really looking at their business, which, I mean, I think they've closed different terminals. It's like when everything's booming, you would think that they would want to open up, but they're just corporate structure changing. So when these rail lines do these types of things, like first and foremost, when you have a contract with that, what happens? You know, how do you plan around that? And next thing to ask is, you know, is that really impacting and making even more of a, you know, you need a bigger Band-Aid to cover up this giant wound that we all have right now with capacity?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly causes a lot of issues. The railroads started implementing what's called PSR, precision railroading, a few years ago. CSX was one of the first ones here in the US, and the UP is still going through that, and that is looking at the different areas they have ramps and how many locomotives they have out there, making it more streamlined so that they can get better transit. I can tell you when CSX did this, I want to say they canceled roughly like 700 lanes within just a few months, and sometimes only gave us a week notice. And then we just literally lost sometimes several $1 million in business because we couldn't even find an option to replace that, say, via truck, because of some of those ramps that were shut down. So it was definitely difficult, probably more difficult a few years ago than it is now. But I do think that as the market is constantly changing, not only are just, you know, trucking companies and 3PLs and railroads looking at, you know, what works best for them. You know, they got to see what makes more money for them too. And you can kind of see like the pecking order and how things go and what makes sense for them to make money and decisions that they make. So it's really hard to go back to customers when this happens. But unfortunately, this is what happens and we have to just deal with it the best that we can. But one thing I will tell you that has worked, I think that everybody here could benefit from, is all different 3PLs and companies have different niches. And I've worked a lot of my career trying to build relationships with different companies and being able to, hey, do you have boxes in this area? And I can trade you boxes in this area if you don't need them. Stuff like that, or even just customers talking to other companies, like say all the ones that are on here, because maybe TJ's company can help this customer in a particular lane, but maybe Jason's company can help them in another lane that TJ's company can't. And I think you see a lot of that now where customers are reaching out a lot more than we've ever seen, because they're trying to find solutions. And sometimes one company is not going to fit the solution for every company.
Right.
So I think it's good that customers are reaching out to see where those niches are. I mean, I've been able to add agents to our network during this time frame. And part of it too is, you know, we have a niche that we're able to help them with that someone else can't. And I think that's key to really building your network and seeing what you can do as friendly competitors, not, hey, you're the enemy, but what can we do to try to help each other?
Right.
Yeah, me and Michael have talked about that with LTL, the full truckload. I've talked to Nicole, you put out a post on sales, and I always said, you know, whenever they say that they're all set and they're good to go, now's the time to bring that up. I had mentioned, you know, I understand you like your carrier a lot. Do you guys struggle in any areas? I mean, your communication is probably great, service is great, but I got trailers. I mean, if they need extra trailers, if you need trailers on site, it's not going to be profitable right off the bat right away, but you start working maybe with that carrier, you know, maybe we can team up with the carrier to help fill some gaps where they're at. It gets you in the door. And then now you can have those conversations they're open to have as they, as you solve some stuff. It's just one other way to get in. I think that's a great point.
So just to add real quick, we just had something happen with a big company specifically yesterday. It was a lane we bid on a year ago. Because the NS didn't have the correct transit, they decided to not award us that lane within the package that we provided them. That was providing us inbound into LA so that we could actually reload those containers back out going to the East Coast. He had already given that business away, said he didn't want to take it off the carrier. Fine. We did the business for a year without, having those boxes come in, even though we priced it that way. So recently, because he's been struggling in LA, I said to him, well, the carrier you gave that business to, were they reloading your boxes? And he said, I don't know. I said, well, they should be reloading your boxes, especially if you need freight coming out of LA. He let us requote it, told us that we would be a backup option because he's not having any issues. And then yesterday I got the email saying, if I give you all of my business in that lane, will you reload all those boxes back out? Absolutely. You got to ask the questions because sometimes it doesn't just come to you either. So just knowing your customers and bringing up those things, definitely, that just landed us a good bit of business going back into LA. That's going to help reload his business coming right back out.
They can't afford right now. I mean, they're busy. You're making their life easier. Like they have to go through setting up a whole new carrier, transitioning carriers and lanes right now. Like with how much it's moving, they can't afford to do it. So if you just get in with this a little bit and then prove yourself, they're like, okay, this is gonna be way easier than I thought. We're switching it.
Yeah, TJ, it's like you give a 4-week period right now to show service. Between now and Cyber Monday, you have 4 weeks to basically prove your worth. If you can get in with a new opportunity, you got 4 weeks to prove that you deserve to be there and you can keep it long term. If you screw it up before then, you'll be gone forever, right? Because they're all looking for stuff between now and Cyber Monday. That's going to be that's it. Then that's bottom line. If you can provide service, you've got a 4-week period to be able to do it in. Then that's all.
Well, then getting creative too with solutions. I was talking to my team today. We had our ops sales meet, one of them. And there are some spots across the country where capacity is just like non-existent. And as you get later in the day, it gets even worse and worse, right? When it comes to truckloads. So I'm like, you guys, we have so many options at our fingertips. It's just thinking about those, right? It's thinking about, okay, maybe we need to have 2 straight trucks on this. We need to do something where we're going to pick this up and, how much of that product is really needed? Can they LTL the rest? Like, thinking about these different solutions that you can craft and create, and talking to your customers. And instead of just not responding and going, we don't have anything, there's no trucks available in this random spot in Texas. It's like, what else can you do? How else can you prove your worth and create a solution, and make something happen? And the worst thing that they could say is no, thank you, but at least it shows that you are coming up with ideas that can help them process and get their freight moving, So Michael, I wanted to ask you too, because, we talked for, I don't know,
5 hours.
yeah, yesterday, in regards to LTL. And it's during these times when things are tough, you're hearing what Christy's saying in regards to things are starting to change and shift back. Like, what does that LTL space look like today, in regards to service? And has every single company increased their rates? Like, what does that look like for all the people who don't live in that world every day?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you say that because I'm always like, no, there's not really many issues, on my end. But I've seen, I just brought on a new customer. It's, we got CSP, our customer specific pricing. So it's, contracted rates through a few carriers. But even them, it's going to happen, right? There's going to be missed pickups. But I don't even think, more or less, it's, when I think of LTL, I just think is one, nobody really knows how they're like strategically even like going to market or, choosing their carriers. There's so many things that go into LTL. I think is, most people are, when you say LTL, it's like, well, for instance, we'll just do an RFP like we do truckload. Well, I consider LTL to be similar to like UPS, FedEx, right? There's just not many options. So, I mean, what, 80% of the volume in the entire country goes to the top 25 LTL carriers. So they don't have to compete for much, right? Whereas, you flip it over to truckload, I don't know, the top 20, it says like the top 25 truckload carriers only get about 10%. So you see, they literally, you have to be strategic when it comes into this LTL pricing, because at the end of the day, they don't have to compete for market share. And, 80% of the LTL carriers have contracted rates. So that 20% of those, again, smaller to medium-sized shippers are getting, these discounts based on, blanket rates or even higher than blanket rates. So it's just, again, I could go, there's just so many moving parts, right? I think it's more or less is like, what kind of freight are you moving? What's your strategy? And then figuring that out, and then going out to market and strategically going to, these carriers and saying, hey, do you want my freight? This is what we do. And then negotiating on that end. And that's where, again, I don't want to just keep plugging a 3PL, but that's where we can come in and say, hey, we're already partners with, these LTL carriers. We can run the data. We can see exactly, specifically what you're doing, what you need, what's going to benefit you the most from a pricing standpoint. And then we go out there and negotiate for them.
And I'm sure too, like Christy, for yourself, when you're moving large volumes, right? And you have a customer that on occasion is doing this, say, particular lane. This is what Michael and I talked about last night, even on the LTL side. So I can kind of see some correlations. When you guys are doing such large volumes in these two modes, you're able to have a little bit more leverage than some clients are going to have when we're doing these things. So if something's late, I'm sure Christy, your team has come together and pulled some crazy hat tricks that, a customer themselves with lower volume would never be able to do. And the same thing for you, Michael, when it comes to that, or if there's a damage, it's like, they want that business from a large 3PL or, someone who's loading a ton of their boxes. So it's like, they're going to be more accommodating to you.
Well,
am I
100%.
Right?
I think though is more or less is like, so even those smaller shippers, right? Because you and I know each other, but like, even when I first started my career, it wasn't like I was just going after these massive accounts. It was, I would walk into companies that were doing, maybe even $50,000 a year in LTL, and they were using like multiple different 3PLs and multiple different carriers direct. And I was like, this is horrible. Like it really is. And you only know what you know, right? But the fact is, it's like for one, us 3PLs, I guess the larger ones, I should say, we all fish from the same pond, right? So it's like they would be using RNL for the same shipment one week with ABC 3PL. the next week I'd look at their data and it was like they used the same or a different 3PL, but R&L. And then then the next week they would use like R&L again, but direct. And it just, you know what I mean? We all fish from the same pond, like we all know, especially R&L. So the rates would always be fluctuating like this. And, you know, LTL rates should not be fluctuating like that. And so these smaller shippers, they can really, again, you're not going to get CSP or customer specific pricing, but just either one, utilize, you know, a few carriers yourself if you want to do that, or go to one 3PL and build that relationship up and utilize, you know, their blanket rates. And when I say blanket rates is, you know, we negotiate our rates with our carriers, or I should say my company negotiates our rates with our carriers, and then we tack on some margin, right? You could still get pretty aggressive with that. Just again, most people don't like to look at LTL. Like nobody wants to look at LTL, honestly. Everyone thinks it's a small spend, but well, that small spend ends up being, you know, $5 million, and you could easily, you know, increase your bottom line just taking a little bit more of a strategic look at that mode, I should say.
That's funny you said that about the
Well, the
fish
tax
pond thing, because I was using that as a reference the other day. Just, you know, if you look at the bigger 3PLs, you know, able to know how to navigate that and whatnot. But yeah, I was using that analogy the other day. You know, capacity is like, you know, like fishing a pond, right? I mean, you could go into that pond or lake, you know, in the spring, you're using a different type of lure, right? You're using the fish are sitting at a different depth. And, you know, that all that takes is like the people that are really good at quote unquote fishing, right? Know that they know what to use, how to change it up. But if you don't, you're fishing the same spot. You're doing the same thing you've always done. Your results are up and down, right? With seasonal and whatever it is. I mean, at the end of the day, if you go to the people that know and have the resources and have the ability to do those types of things and bring maybe some efficiency to it, you know, right?
Yeah.
You go out, you go to this spot, but really that they know where the spot is that is the best. So it's something that you realize right now that shippers are having to adapt, and they're having to.
TJ, you're like choppy.
No, I think someone has it on to hear an echo. I don't know if someone has the YouTube channel on watching that as well.
Hey, can I weigh in really quick, you guys?
Yeah, go for it, Todd. Love to hear from you.
You got to hear my expert advice on all this shipping stuff, right? On modes, right? Which I know absolutely nothing about. So I've been learning. This has been a complete learning experience for me. And a couple of things, you guys. First of all, I just read the email from Tony that he wasn't going to be on here. So that changed a little bit of what the expectations were for me tonight anyways. But I have to tell you guys, I mean, it's been great listening to you. Obviously, across all kinds of businesses, you guys are dealing with the same thing that so many others are dealing with, and that is you've got to pivot in times like this. You've got to figure out ways, because obviously the world, you know, I tell people the world for me, you know, in March, not unlike many others, got turned upside down. I mean, I travel around the country and speak and teach leadership, and especially in athletics. And so, you know, March, everything shut down. And then you fast forward a couple months and we went through the waves of a lot of the racial tension that was going on and injustices and things. And so from a sports world standpoint, everything changed. And again, I know other individuals, even in my space, you know, a lot of people it's like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? It's so imperative to just keep trying new things. It's so important. Keep trying new things. Keep trying to, you know, care about your business, care enough about what you're doing, be passionate about it. And as I'm listening to you guys, obviously I'm hearing all of those different answers. Now, my hope is, I don't know what kind of teams you have, how big a teams or small, really doesn't matter. You may have one person working for you, you may have 50. But the challenge is how do you get those teams to feel that way about it? How do you get them to be as passionate about making a pivot and about sustaining your business in tough times like this as you are as an owner? And I hope that, from what I understand, I'm going to be back on maybe in a few weeks, and I'm going to talk a lot more about some leadership and team stuff. So I'm going to check out tonight because I actually had to leave. I actually had to leave in a couple minutes anyways. So I'm going to cut out right now, but I'm just going to thank you guys for the opportunity.
No, thank you, Todd. And you're so right. You're so right. And that's what we're talking about, is this concept of what to expect. What do we do as leaders and people working in this industry? So we really look forward to your insight when you do come back. I'm sure it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, we got to get Todd's gonna have
Thank
his
you,
own.
Todd.
It's gonna be good.
Yeah. Thank you,
Yeah.
Todd.
I'm
Hey,
actually,
Nicole.
you guys will love this. I'm actually in an elementary school classroom right now.
That's
I'm
awesome.
live because my son is out on a basketball court and they're in practice. So I've got to go out and help coach. So
All
right.
how about that, all
That's way
right?
more important
Bye,
than here.
Todd.
That's
No,
my
go ahead,
push,
Todd.
man. I got just 2 minutes. So anyways, thank you guys. Have a great night. It's great hearing you. Thanks, guys.
All right.
Yeah, thanks.
So Nicole, I just wanted to hit on something. It just came in my head. So global trans or a bigger 3PL. There's been times where again we go in and we provide multiple solutions to streamline a process and increase their bottom line. And then like even so far as even run their RFP. That doesn't mean we're always like handling the transportation piece, but we're handling the management piece of it, right? If it's like a really
Right.
large company. I just thought about it. Is like if I was to, that's where I would think is like utilizing our smaller 3PLs that might not have the full suite of capabilities to offer someone, getting into because again, if we're running if we're managing the entire RFP for these companies, we're going out we're going to strategically go out to maybe some brokers, right? Maybe some other smaller 3PLs. I think that's another way to again everybody to be profitable, right? Because on our end, we're already figuring out different ways. Like, I mean, you hear me talk about it, but like maybe we save this company 30% or increase their profitability on other ways, so we don't have to go out when we're up doing this RFP. We're not beating up these carriers, or we're not beating up these 3PLs where that might be a good spot to like again get into something like that where it's like okay, they're handling it from the solution standpoint. They're not going to beat us up for price, because I know for a fact like some I've ran, like I actually am in the process of one right now. I'm reaching out to a few 3PLs where I'm like, hey, listen, do you want this? And more or less being transparent with those other brokers saying, hey, listen, I want you to be profitable on this, but I don't want like, again, be profitable. Tell me a real price, especially on the truckload side of things. Right. And just make sure that we can get those trucks there. If it's going to be $1,000 more per shipment, if it makes sense on our end and your end, but we're always going to get the service, dude. Okay, right? So I don't know. It just came to my head. I figured, hell, why not say it?
No, that's cool.
Michael, can I say something?
What's up?
Can I say something to that? So what you're talking about is exactly what I did. Was I went out to find a solution to grow our LTL because we didn't have the contracts, we didn't have the volume to get the pricing to even grow it. So we were a Blue Grace Logistics franchise years ago.
Oh,
Now we're just a strategic partnership.
Where at? Do you know Chris?
I saw on your profile you were there.
I love, do you know Chris?
Chris Capellas.
He's on the enterprise. Well, the dude
Steve,
taught me a
Steve
ton.
was the one guy.
Awesome.
Yeah. So we actually have a strategic partnership with Blue Grace right now. We still have another year on our contract, but
Nice.
it's one of those things that like we actually have other smaller companies that use us for that same service, which I think is something you can expand upon yourself. Like you're saying, that's another great way to bring in revenue.
I mean, exactly. It's like, and I think honestly that's where I see, because I do come off probably like a dick. Someone's really loud.
It's Jason. I think do you have like YouTube on?
No, it's like this new iPad. Let me figure it out.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's just, it's making a.
But so I'll just follow my own sword is, because I've always worked for a company that has had the full suite, right? So it's like, I come off like a dick sometimes probably, and I don't even realize it. It's like, I'm like, screw it. But it's like, realistically, it's like, I'm thinking about it. It's like, because things are changing, right? And, I talk about all this time, always about like solutions, and that's where it's going to come down to eventually, right? Eventually you only get, you get so low to rates, you hit the bottom floor. What do we do now, right? How do we do that? And then I think that's where it's like everyone, like, I guess, could be happy or profitable at least, is because like utilizing the companies that do have, we do have the resources to go in there and really provide, different ideas to, again, not even save a company money on rates, but just save them money or increase their profitability on other things, right? On other ways.
The
Other things we
intangibles
present
of
them.
time, employees.
Because
All
That's
of
the thing
them.
is,
Mhm.
we all like, and it's always been my mindset is, I don't want to like, I would never want to like beat someone up on a, from a carrier. Everybody needs to get paid, right? Especially the people that are actually, again, I always say is, as a salesperson, I have the easiest job, right? I'd rather pay my ops people more, right? Because they're the ones making things happen. And the same thing goes for my mentality as, hey, the trucks, right? I'd rather get these truck drivers paid more, right? So how do I do that? How do I not beat
Yeah.
how do I not beat people up? And that's my job, is to go in and figure out how to drive down cost in a company's supply chain without having to essentially at times ever even touch a rate, right?
Yeah. And looking at that full supply chain, you've talked LTL, we've talked expedite, intermodal. Jason, why don't you touch on the flatbed?
Yeah, that's what I was
What
going
you're
to say.
seeing flatbed wise.
Yeah, it's interesting because flatbed's totally different than what all other modes are experiencing right now, and I call it the calm before the storm, right? So what we're seeing now in flatbed world is asset providers, right? They have drivers that are contracted to them, company drivers. They're able to still provide super cheap rates because the industrial economy is dead, right? Absolutely dead. We're not producing, we're not manufacturing on that end. It's all e-commerce that you all are dealing with every day. So you're seeing cheap rates. However, with a brokered carrier, right? So owner operators, 5 truck carriers, 10 truck carriers that have gone out on their own, they're either an older demographic who's not driving due to COVID, or they are go pick up a drive-in and go make more money because that's where the money is. So you're seeing a huge disparity between what an asset provider is able to do in the flatbed world for a shipper compared to what we are now. I've never seen anything like it. And now we're looking at what's going to happen in March. In March 2018, you could not cover a flatbed load day of. You couldn't. I would literally sit there and make 100 calls to cover 2 loads. You couldn't find a truck. And I think that what you're going to see is that as the money comes back to flatbed and the industrial economy starts to come back slowly, you're going to see the tightest capacity in the flatbed market that we've seen in years. Because all these people that went to drive-in who are making good money, they're not going to be quick to come back. There's going to be a slingshot effect that's going to take 3 to 4 months. And it's going to be extremely interesting when these large asset providers aren't going to be able to provide the capacity they promised next year. And the brokered options aren't going to be able to find trucks available. And kind of my strategy with it is, TJ talked about everyone fishing from the same pond. I'm adding fish to the pond. I take a 5 truck carrier and I turn them into a 20, a 30, 40, right? I give them business and grow them over time. So now I'm adding fish to the pond. I'm not fishing from the same pond. I'm creating, and that's where I think and I think all of you guys are all in the same boat and we all do that. And I think that's what separates us from, people being able to replicate what we do.
So when do you think, Jason, that's going to really
March.
Let's be a little ballsy.
So if you look at what happened in 2018, right? So we had a hurricane at the end of the year, Katrina, Houston flooded, it really destroyed oil markets and everything else. But you didn't see the building impact, right? New building materials and things like that until March. What I'm anticipating with moves from metro areas up to the suburbs, new home building is going to blow up once people feel safe to leave their homes. A huge industrial kind of, manufacturing increase. People are going to be out way more, and they're going to all do it all at once they feel safe to do so. Once it happens, Flatbed's going to go to the races, and I'm really excited for the ride, to be honest. I love it. It's interesting, right? Like, it might be hard, it might be difficult, but you know what? It's not routine, and that's what I think for all of us on this call, that's where we thrive. It's not the routine, right? That's where we create opportunities. That's where we create solutions that Mike was talking about. If it's the same every day, none of us it's boring. 2, what are we doing differently than anybody else?
Challenge.
Yeah. No, and I'm with you on that. I think being a part of that and being specialty experts, it's what makes it cool. I know that I'll go to a conference and I'll go, hey, what do you do? And they're like, just brokerage, truckload brokerage. And it's like, no, I like to be a part of the groups like TJ, where it's like there's passion behind that and solutions and concepts and all of that stuff. And so you're right, Jason, on who gets the most creative and develops that value like you're doing today for March. That's when you run. And
it's also loving what you do too. I mean, it's a true, I love it. It's like, studied history, but this is like, it's interesting what's happening right now. It's so interesting, and how the people who are able to you can talk about tech disruptors and things like that, but no, it's not that. It's who can understand what's going on right now and be able to effectively make decisions and do it later, right? So, 2019, obviously the end and the beginning of this year was tough, but I think Christy talked about it. How do we make our business more robust and not have that happen to us again? And the people who can adjust and have dynamic leadership and actually understand what their customers' needs are going to be the ones that come out of this extremely successful.
That's why you look at just, Jason works at Circle with me, and that's just kind of what our culture is here. I mean, our owner, Eric, he works at the headquarters, he's up in Chicago all the time, but like, Jason, you've talked to Eric, when he comes in and you've got a problem, he's like, just do this. Well, just do that. Go over the drop this, do this. It's like, to him, it's nothing. He's done it forever. Right. It's like, I didn't think I could do that. I can do that. Wow. I mean, there's that little bit of freedom, but also like that, well, yeah, doesn't that make sense to you? And you're like, well, it does make sense. But like, he's just literally pulling us out of the box and saying, he doesn't say it, he says it more of I've already known this type of way. Think about it, come up with something.
The freedom to do that is huge, right? That,
we have that freedom
as leaders, right? As leaders, allowing your staff to take us to the next level, right? Like, I don't know everything, and I never say I will, but the 20 people that work for me, they're going to bring a new solution to the table, and it's my responsibility to make sure I hear it out, because, if you're one of those closed off leaders, you may miss your next, revenue stream. You may miss a market flip that you need to capitalize on. I think like a lot of leaders, especially in this industry, are just so firm and so, alpha, this is the way or the highway. And I think being dynamic is going to be extremely important, as it was the last 6 months, but even more the next 6 months.
And we were able to I just talked the other day, we put in a solution just on the asset side. And, I was with Jason on the brokerage side for a long time. And, I talked to my customers, and it's funny because like when you only have so many trucks, you lose that capacity. You start losing like the communication with the customer, even like once they realize you're not accepting tenders. And I can't stand that. I love freight. So like I can't lose that. So I literally built a capacity pod, within our asset division that is basically brokerage. I have these conversations with the customers that, hey, listen, I know you've got drop trailers. A lot of the reason why you don't use brokerages is because these are just tough loads to understand. You got to know what you're doing. And I brought in 3 experienced, brokers that had worked with that. And they sat right in with dispatch, learned the account, and went out and sourced carriers, those 3-4 carriers. Listen, a lot of these shippers have been shipping for a long time. Those carriers may have been in and out of there, or they've got trailers on their lot. Like he said, adding to the pond, where are the trailers at? They should be sitting there because some of these carriers don't have access to some of this stuff. So, we've made those relationships and been able to work with the shippers, talking to them saying, hey, what is your start loading time to your end loading time? Let's coordinate this so that I can get a couple carriers that we can bring in, right? They know when to drop, they know when it's loaded. You don't have to deal with the issues of them thinking it's a live load or whatever it is. And we bring that capacity. And I could do that with a lot of the customers that would probably were starting to like not reach out to us as much because our trucks couldn't run it. And they just thought it was the greatest idea. And they've like, I've never set up a broker before. I'm like, we're not really a broker. I mean, like
we are. We're an additional,
right?
Addition, right?
And and when you tell them that, when you can kind of describe to them like, it's not really that it's about being a broker. There's good and bad brokers, right? Your experiences have probably been with bad brokers, or that's what you hear about because you don't use them. But once you start using a good one, you won't go back. And it's just something that you can do, that you hold the standards of the shipper to the carriers, and it's a whole new dynamic that I came up with. I didn't think it was going to get approved, but it got approved, and it's been great since.
Well, like TJ couldn't get me trailers 2 weeks ago, so failure on his end. But so I went out for this carrier that I worked with, and I went and found him 20 trailers. I called like trailers for sale. I was on Craigslist helping him buy trailers. Midnight, 2 a.m., helping him. The ownership there and the individual accountability that you hold to that relationship for your customers. In my mind, I can overcome any obstacle because of that sort of like commitment to them. How many people are going to go do that? Go find 20 trailers to buy in November of, a pandemic year, right? But that's something that we want to help our carriers just as much as we want to be able to provide for our customers. And I feel like that relationship goes 2 ways.
Shippers weren't open to hearing it before. Now they're open to hearing
100%.
You got a solution? What is it? Even if it's crazy, tell me. I don't care.
So we're getting close to time. You guys know that I'm the time watcher.
Nicole, let me say something. Sorry.
Well, hold on. I might actually let you go on with this concept, because I'm going to ask your bold prediction. So again, that was the concept of what we were trying to accomplish here is what's going on today. And Jason gave us he gave us a month, guys. He said what month this is happening in his world. So what are you, Michael, I'm going to start with you first. Like, what's your bold prediction in regards to what we're going to see in that LTL world? Because that's what we're talking about for you today, for this next coming months and into next year. Is it capacity going to continue to be tight? Service, all that fun stuff. What are you looking at?
It's not that bad. I think it's more or less more people, again, we keep using this word solution, right? But it's like more people educating their shipper, or I hate saying shipper, the customer. Yeah. But I have to sidebar this real quick because I got to go with this.
Okay.
These guys are this is why this is the need in this industry right here is you guys are super smart. Like, I don't know what the hell you're talking about, right? And I always say is like, I think you need people like TJ and your team, right? You guys know so much about operations and you build out solutions from an operational standpoint. I think that where the gap is someone, again, me, or there's a very few of us, but going to a higher level to build out a solution from a different standpoint. And you have I run those meetings, right? It's like, I'm the dumbest one in the room, but I know things from a financial standpoint. I could look at data, and then I have people that are super passionate and know the nitty gritty stuff like TJ. And that is the gap. I think that if people start realizing that, having everybody, making it a team sale, right? You need everybody. You need all types of minds, and really selling these solutions on multiple levels in a company. We're not going to have to beat up carriers as much, and everyone's going to. I think it's just going to make things a lot easier, because we always talk about solutions from the shipping level, and that's awesome, right? But let's start. See it. Let's start getting solutions from a financial level, so that we don't have to go beat up. We can save money, and we don't have to go beat up carriers, and then you could really drive these solutions. Right, because I'm not gonna be able to do what TJ does.
That gap that you're seeing is even more prominent within that customer. The people at the head of procurement, right? The guy. That's
why I have a job, TJ. That's the gap. That's why I have a job. It's like nobody.
You could have load planners and people that work with you every day that absolutely love you, or literally, I would use these guys for everything, and then they go to the head of procurement, who is only looking at it from a financial, from a this, from that, saying no, we're going to use this carrier. And there's a huge disconnect there, just with on the customer side, let alone what you're saying on the sales.
Well, that's what I said. Is
that's changing though, guys.
That's what I said. We have to get everybody involved.
Oh,
you're seeing directors of procurement involved in.
This is why it doesn't work.
Locations more than I've ever seen it before.
This is what happens at the end of every show. We start talking about something else that is just fantastic, right? And you can host a whole nother show on this topic, because it'd be great to invite some more shippers on the show and learn those gaps. And who knows? I think the best companies that are going to go to these shippers are going to have roundtables. I mean, I think the way that the environment is going is there will be roundtables. There will be concepts that are traded differently with carriers, brokers, all of that in these next coming years, with tech, everything. So I do want to shelf that, because like I said, TJ, write that down, because we should definitely have this concept and bring these people back.
What do you want? What are you going to call it?
I don't know. What are we calling it, guys?
Can we all just get along? No, but
I know. And so
roundtable. I think your shippers roundtable would be awesome.
Roundtable. Yeah.
I'll end it with this, Nicole. Just so sorry, but I had to go with it.
I know.
So LTL. I say, just honestly, I'm going with this, strategically reach out to a 3PL, a couple of them, have them look at your LTL. You need to figure out what is your specific needs for your LTL, right? And I'll say this: if you do anywhere between 5 million and below, and you're utilizing over 7 carriers, take another look at that. Because again,
what's your prediction? What's your prediction?
Prediction is, if there's no prediction. I mean, LTL is pretty simple, dude. But it's again, nobody wants to get in front of these companies and explain it to them. Like,
I got one.
What's up?
I got a prediction. I think LTL is going to get even more crazier because e-commerce is just going to be booming even more next year.
And return.
And I think from a rail perspective, yes, it's going to be crazy. It's going to be booming, and it's going to be wild next year. And I think that this is going to go heavy even into rail, possibly through first quarter, maybe into second next year. So that's my prediction.
I want to talk to you about rail. We could sidebar that, but I definitely.
Yeah, let's do what's your prediction on your outlook on the rail then, Christy? Future.
I mean, my outlook on rail is there's still going to be issues for a while. It might loosen up a little bit here as customers are utilizing trucks, but once the market changes a little bit and the rail can handle a little bit more, I think you'll see some of that truck business go back to rail. More than it is right now, and that's going to change the market somewhat on the rail side. But I think rail is going to continue to stay strong like it is, though, definitely through first quarter next year for sure. You know, that's just what I'm seeing and I'm hearing, and I know what our customers and what you know, retail everyone's bringing in, and there's a lot of product that's not going to make it to stores by Christmas, and there's a lot of product that's still going to be sitting there that needs to go somewhere.
Expediters, just saying. That's what I was going to say in regards to my prediction is it's funny. I've come to realize like how much we're so intertwined with each other, and we're all a domino effect. I think that's what I actually named my post today with that concept, because Jason, what happens in TJ's world, look at what it's doing to your world. Same thing with you, Christy. Same thing with you, Michael. And it's the same thing with me. It's all of this. We all affect the supply chain completely. So in regards to obviously my business, I think it's going to just continually keep booming. I mean, we keep having record months now. During the beginning of COVID, it was tough for a minute, and then something happened, and we've transitioned back and then some. So I agree with the continuation of the strength of the market for Q1. I mean, and we always have an outstanding January, so I don't even know what this January could turn into.
Knowing each mode, and why I really love this is and why I'm like a nerd when it comes to it. It's why I share what I share, because a lot of it's just like me realizing, oh my God, I didn't know that. And then I share it. It's like I'm an expert, but really I just learned it. But like you throw shit at the wall and you see what sticks, and whatever sticks, you want to share it with people because it's so cool. But knowing all those modes puts you such a step ahead of people. And that's why I had no sympathy for anybody complaining during COVID, because they weren't willing to reach out and do those types of things. And, you know, especially in the drive-in, because drive-in melts into everything. Knowing what the ocean freight's doing, right? What ports are going to be busy. I can now, from an operational standpoint, know where to send my trucks. Knowing from a sales standpoint, you know, knowing each mode and each commodity and what's going on, I can now reach out to the ship. I'm not going to waste my time reaching out to shippers that don't need me. I'm going to reach out to the ones that are hurting.
And that's what's so cool about 2020 and where we're going is we have that data, and we can make those decisions as companies and business owners and even shippers. We have that understanding of seasonality and what to do when these things come about to pivot and attack the market and help out.
And when they come up with even in sales, when a shipper comes with, or whoever it is comes with a rebuttal because they're using a different mode or whatever it is, it's hard to overcome that rebuttal if you know nothing about that mode. You know,
you need guys like you.
Well, that's why we need these networks of people. I mean, even just listening to Christy and Jason.
Hey,
and Michael.
Jason, you got to mute that, brother.
So I'm sorry to say, but we're going to end it today. But again, thank you guys. I mean, so much.
No, don't end it. Don't end it. No.
We might be the only 5 people that like to talk about shipping.
You can tell I have 3 kids, right? Because when it's time to go, it's time to go.
Yeah, wife just texted.
Yeah. So thank you guys again. And like I said, TJ, I'm glad
you all.
We'll have to continue.
Nice meeting you too.
Yeah, nice meeting you guys. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Sorry for the audio trouble.
It's okay.
Good.
I pulled Jason in last minute. He's still at the office, probably working, booking freight. So
yeah, I got about 2 hours ahead of me still.
That's what I'm saying.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
You're doing a great job. Have a good night.